those of you that don't know me, I am a director at Radical Recruit. Radical Recruit is a not-for-profit. We help people who have barriers to work. Our mission initially was to help those probably deemed furthest from the labour market, who were homeless or somebody with a conviction, somebody coming from domestic violent relationship, young people leaving the care system. The pandemic hit and we found that everyone with protected characteristics was disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And this led to huge amounts of people losing their jobs because of ethnicity, sexuality, disability. So we want to address that. Our support is to offer employability programs and move people closer to the labour market and into jobs that they love. Alongside the work that we do with our radicals, we also work really closely with selected employers, and we give guidance on diversity and inclusion, leadership with empathy and compassion, and we also assist with mapping out recruitment processes for them that remove barriers to work. So lots of consultancy staff and also assist them with general recruitment needs that they might have. So that's me. I'm a queer man and I'm a he, his, and I am joined by a fantastic lineup today. I'm really excited to introduce our panel, each bringing something uniquely beautiful to our discussion and the panel today. I'm going to start with my colleague, actually. I've got my colleague, Chan Allen, who's here. Do you want to say hi, Chan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shan. I am a radical recruitment and engagement coordinator, and I identify as a lesbian woman.
Thank you, Chan. We have the phenomenal Joanne Lockwood, who works in the inclusion space. Over to you, Joanne. Oh, I think you're still on mute.
Schoolgirl error. There we go.
We can hear you now.
Good morning, Lee. Good morning, everybody in the audience and the rest of the panel. My name is Joanne Lockwood. I am a woman. I use the pronouns she and her. I describe myself as an inclusion and belonging specialist. I work with organisations such as Radical and other recruitment organisations to promote a more equitable and inclusive recruitment culture.
Thank you, Joanne. And thank you for joining us today. Our other special guest is a chap called Decontee, and who actually in the past was a radical himself. So I'd like you to introduce yourself then, Decontee.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here. Thank you so much to everyone joining. My name's Decontee. My pronouns are he, his. And yes, as Lee was saying, I am a radical. They placed me into my current role as a fundraiser at a charity.
Brilliant. So good. Okay, just to remind everybody that this session today is being recorded. We, Radical Recruit, and the group have a zero tolerance on discrimination. This is a positive meeting and discussion, and anybody that's not contributing positively will be asked to leave. We are here as a panel because we have our lived experiences that we want to share with you, and we're really hoping that we're going to get some allies out of this, or people with allies that will have an even better understanding of how to be an ally. And anybody else that's joined us from a business view, to be able to take back to your organizations some real actions to help improve things for our community. Right, let's start then. I think our starting point is definitely that it's London Pride tomorrow. And looking at Pride, this started 53 years ago with Stonewall riots in New York. A small bar called Stonewall, which I have actually been fortunate enough to visit, was being raided constantly by the police, and the LGBTQIA community were being treated quite disturbingly. And After a while, they thought, you know what, no more of this. We are not going to take this oppression, and they fought back. Thanks to those incredible people, we now find ourselves 53 years later with much better rights around equality, but there's still a way to go. The rainbow flag, which Joanne has behind her, again, was created in 1978. It was actually created by a drag queen who just returned from fighting in Vietnam for America. And a openly gay politician, Harvey Milk, commissioned this drag queen to create the flag. Shortly after it was created and used at the first Pride event, Harvey Milk was assassinated because of his sexuality. So we have our heritage is one of oppression, of being discriminated against and being treated unfairly, and we've made lots of progress. As I say, there's still a long way to go. It's still illegal to be gay in 71 countries. 12 of those countries will impose a death sentence on people that are having same-sex relationships. So quite frightening when you look at what's happening globally. There's a real need for solidarity, for everybody to come together and support. And Pride is an occasion where we see lots of beautiful colours, lots of beautiful things to look at, but also there's a lot of meaning behind what's going on. It's not a party, even though it might look like we're having lots of fun, and we are having fun, but at the same time, it's still very much a protest. Just going to the panel now to find out what pride means to each of them. Joanne, what does pride mean to you?
Wholeheartedly, I echo what you just said, Lee. It is still a protest. It is still not safe to be queer, trans, or however you identify in many parts of the world, even what we would call the educated countries, even America. Even in the UK, we still have gay conversion therapy and trans conversion therapy. And we've only recently allowed gay men to donate blood without onerous questions. So we're still evolving our rights. So to me, yeah, protest first and foremost. But yes, it has to be a celebration. It has to be a time where we can be ourselves. We can be part of our community. I want to be in a space where I am the typical, and I am the typical in gay space, in queer space, at Pride. Our cis allies can come along, but it's our space, and I can be me. I can be free. I remember I went to World Pride when it was on the Isle of Wight a few years ago with my wife Marie, and it's the first time we felt comfortable as a couple to kiss and embrace and hold hands on the street. So Pride gives me that power to realize I have the strength of my communities around me, and I can be myself. So that's what Pride does to me.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience. Jan, what does it mean to you? And maybe as well share your most memorable Pride, as Joanne just did.
Joanne just made me really emotional. So yes, Pride, like both of you said, you know, there's a lot more behind it than just the colours and what people see to be the parties and stuff. Pride to me means giving our community a voice. It's certainly given me a voice. It's put me in a better position in terms of my personal life and my work life. But as you say, there's still a long way to go and still a lot of education that needs to be given.
Do you have a special moment, Jan, from any of the Prides you've attended?
I think for me, it has to be my first ever Pride, which I went to in Birmingham. Just for me, like I was 18 when I went to my first Pride, so it was seeing everyone together, like people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, and there was like people that were heterosexual there, people that were bringing their kids and their families and stuff. And it was just nice to just be together and support each other. There was no animosity, there was no hatred, and people could just be who they are.
Yeah, that's absolutely one of the most magical things, that people can be their authentic self. And I spent a lot of time as a child hiding away in my bedroom because I had no visibility of people like me. And the first Pride gave me an opportunity to see other people that were beautifully gay out celebrating, not hiding away. It's very empowering, like Joanne said. Decontee, what about yours?
I echo all of what's been said already, really. For me, Pride is mainly about visibility. For me, it's about coming into a space where I belong truly. I am just a normal person in that space. I am one of many. And I think it's fantastic when you do go to Pride events, you see a diverse array of people. That's for me is really, really beautiful. My favorite Pride moment happened a few weeks ago at York Pride. And what really struck me, as apart from the party and the music that was going on, there was a group of people all playing football in a circle. There were young people, there were old people, there were children, about 4 or 5. There was me, a terrible football player, also getting involved and playing along. But what really struck me is that the kids that were in that circle getting involved, they wouldn't see me as a gay man. They wouldn't see someone as a bisexual person. They wouldn't see sexuality in general. They would just go away from that experience knowing that they played a game with a group of people. So I feel like, yeah, it's just about being part of the community is really, really beautiful to me.
I'm so sorry, I forgot to take myself off mute, but that was beautifully shared. Thank you very much. And yes, I think there's a big thing around, obviously we're shouting out, we want equality around legislation, but we do have to remind ourselves that we need to win hearts to make real changes. And 1 in 10 still have disgust when they look at a person from our community. 1 in 10, which is obviously very saddened to hear, that it's such a large proportion of the population still have disgust when they think about or they look at one of us. So that's great, being in there, being with the community, showing that we are just as worthy and right to be there as anyone else. So my most memorable Pride, so I've been to lots and all over the world, but London was hosting a World Pride, and for some reason it was decommissioned and it wasn't then to go ahead. So none of the floats were coming, none of the entertainment. But what happened was incredible. The veterans from 50 years ago turned up to march and walk. And I was actually blessed to walk alongside them. And I think that was definitely the most profound moment, to see these people who had been at the very first Pride in London walking again, and I was able to walk alongside them. So thank you. Thanks for sharing all your lovely Pride stories. For our audience, there is an opportunity if you want to put questions into the chat. They will be saved until towards the end of this session. We have our wonderful founder of Radical Recruit, who will be looking after those questions and presenting them to us as we move forward. So there we go. Okay, so we've spoken about Pride. I think one thing that's really important at Pride is to have, I think, as you said, Jan, that you saw lots of families and people there with warmth and love and appreciation. And allies play such a key part in helping our community with equality. So it would be nice, I think, now for us to start looking at and talking a bit about allies, the significance of allies to each of you. We can talk about what a good ally looks like, and what the audience who want, maybe potentially want to be allies or better allies, what they can do to be that. So what does an ally mean to each of you as I go around the panel? And Joanne, coming to you first.
An ally gives me strength. An ally gives me confidence. An ally allows me to be me. An ally is there when I'm struggling. An ally is there when I'm happy. An ally is there not just because I need them, but because they want to be with me. An ally is someone in my life that I value. They could come from all walks. It doesn't have to be an official position, just somebody who says, Joe, I love you and I've got your back. And they will step in without me having to ask. They will know when I'm happy. They'll know when I'm sad. So that's what allies mean to me. Someone who's there in my life that I know that I don't even have to look for. They'll always be there for me.
Fantastic. Yes, yes. Again, coming from a place of love, and just being there for you always, that consistent, been there consistently. Thank you. Chan, and how about you? What does an ally mean to you?
Echo what Joanne says, but also an ally to me is someone that supports and defends our community to the T, to like they support and defend anything else that they believe in. And yeah, they're doing it because they want to, not because they're made to do it or because an opinion has been forced upon them. They're doing it because they're educated enough to know that we need them to walk beside us.
Yeah, absolutely. Walking alongside us. And as we have friends and allies that don't walk in our shoes, but they do walk alongside us. So they might not have the exact lived experience that we have, but they have exposure to our lived experience because they're walking alongside. So very good. Decontee, what about you?
When I think of the word ally, I think of the word empathy. It's someone that can put themselves into, an LGBTQIA plus person's shoes and sort of think about how they would feel if they were in that particular situation. So it's someone who's very empathetic, someone who's supportive, someone who sees you for all of you, for who you are. So I've been very lucky to have many people in my life that have shown me that sort of support, and I really wouldn't be the person I am today without being shown that complete non-judgmental and total support for me.
Fantastic. And it's so nice to hear you have that total support for you. Deserve it. For me, I think allyship is the greatest gift that can be given to really help people improve the quality of their life. Often it could be that they are helping save someone's life. If you look at young people from our community, 1 in 8 has attempted to take their life. And if you consider that for the trans community, half have actually thought about doing this. So it's those numbers should not be like that, and they wouldn't be like that if everybody had the right allies alongside them and support. I mean, I have friends who are allies, but for me, real allies are the ones that are there all the time to, even when we're not, to put right when somebody's saying something that's wrong, to correct them, especially if they're speaking with disrespect for my community, for our community. My friend that will still speak out on our behalf even when we're not there, and to do that on their socials, in person, just to have the courage really to say no, this is not the case. So I think it's really important allies have a voice alongside ours, and then to be a good ally, really educate yourself, understand more about our community by reading books, looking at queer authors, following influential people from our community on socials, and just seeing what's happening, like familiarize yourself with challenges that we're facing, changes in legislation. You know, things are really quite fluid, unfortunately. There's potentially a chance in the US that they'll be reviewing the gay marriage. So, and look how we would never have thought that that might be on the cards again, but things do change. The government in the UK with conversion therapy deciding that actually that will not apply to our trans community. So we need people to stand up and say, no, we're not accepting this, to protest alongside us, to sign petitions, you know, to lobby to their local MPs. And then alongside that, little things that allies can do, you know, address people with their pronouns, correct pronouns, spread the truth. Remember, it's not about you, it's about us. And one thing I think that's really important, because something that's very significant in our community, in our life, is coming out. And true allies will be there to support when somebody does come out. And I know that our panel, we've all had very different experiences of coming out. And in particular, I really wanted to hear, because it's quite different for you, Decontee, compared to you, Chan, and those experiences. I'd like to talk about both, so that the audience can see how it was received for one of you and for the other. So let's start with Decontee, because I think yours is going to be a much more positive coming out story, but it still had its challenges, of course. But let's hear from you first.
Sure. So I would say I first knew I was a gay man from the age of about 10 or 11, when I was in school, and I basically fell for one of my male friends, and it was a really difficult period for me, to be sort of confused with your feelings, not sure what it is, not showing how to take it. So knowing really, really early on my sexuality, it took a very long time for me to come to terms with it and accept it and embrace it. And I didn't actually come out till I was about 21 years old. So if you can think, you know, 10 years of this sort of inner turmoil, trying to be someone I'm not, trying to put on this persona, trying to hide a part of myself. I'm sure many of you can imagine, you know, what sort of what that effect would have on a person. So I finally plucked up enough, well, not plucked up enough courage. I came to a point where I was able to share with my friends, basically. So I remember building up in my head for a really, really long time, and trying to pick like the perfect moment for each situation. But I then worked out that there never really was going to be a perfect situation. Like when is an appropriate time to sort of have this conversation with people. So I tried to just sort of like share, basically. I was really lucky in the fact that all of my experiences with my friends, they were really supportive. They were extremely understanding. They were really grateful. They thanked me for, like, you know, a lot of people said to me, we thought this might be the case, but we didn't want to pressure you to sort of we didn't want to pressure you. We could tell you weren't ready to share this with us. So they were really grateful and thankful that, you know, I was able to come to that point in my life. And one of the biggest things that struck me about my coming out experience is I expected it to be, well, in terms of my relationships with people, my friendships, I expected things to change massively. I expected there to be, you know, like huge ceremony, and then like our whole dynamic in the relationship was going to change. And then, you know, I had huge expectations, but I'm quite lucky to say that what struck me the most is that wasn't the case. We just continued as if nothing had ever happened. And if anything, my relationships were strengthened, because for the first time ever, I was able to share this part of myself with people. I was able to talk to them about my love interests. I was able to talk to them about my relationships. I was able to share like this massive part of myself, which I've been hiding for so many years. So yeah, it was a real turning point in my life.
How did it make you feel when you're finally able to remove that tape from around your mouth and tell people, this is me, this is who I love, this is who I am? How did that make you feel?
Just sheer relief, really. Sheer relief. It's literally like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. You don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. You don't have to conjure stories about celebrities that you fancy that you don't. You don't have to make lies about people you've been dating. Like it's a big burden to carry around that weight. So it was just sheer relief. It's like breathing out, really. If there are any there's a song which I keep on listening to at the moment. It's by Kat Burns, I want to say. It's called Free. It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and she released it after she came out. And it just speaks about this huge relief. It's a really, really beautiful song that I'd recommend everyone take a listen to. Thank you.
I think we'll definitely be listening to that later. Maybe we'll play it at our team meeting this afternoon, Chan. Thank you for that. I mean, it's so good to hear coming out stories like that. It really is, and to know that people were there to support you, and finally you were able to feel you could be your authentic self, happy, and yeah, not have to pretend anymore and talk about celebrity crushes with probably female pop stars that you actually had zero interest in that way. So that's really, thank you. Now, Chan, I know that your situation, your coming out was not like that at all, was it? You want to share with us how it was for you?
Okay, so I first knew that I was lesbian when I was in reception, actually, at school. So I was around 5 years old. I didn't exactly know what the feeling was. I just knew I was attracted to other females. And then I had a lot of issues with my family and going into the care system. And I kind of battled with my feelings all throughout that time and knew that I needed to come out when I was around 12 years old. But at the time I was in like a residential children's home, and it had like 18 kids of various ages in it. And I was allowed to have contact with my grandmother. And at the time I started to see this girl, and she was a lot older than me, but I started to like talk to her, and we were kissing and stuff like that. So I decided to go to my nan and tell her.
How old were you, Shan?
I was 12 at the time. Okay. So I decided to go and tell my nan about it. I just sat down with her and we were drinking tea, and I kept saying my friend in every conversation that I was having. And then my nan said, are you going out with this girl? And I said, yeah. My heart was pounding. I had sweaty palms. My stomach was in knots. And then it wasn't the reaction that I wanted. Her answer was, that's disgusting. You should all be put on an island and burnt together. It's disgusting. Like, it's not appropriate. I felt like my whole world came crashing down, and in that moment I felt anger, like pure raw anger, which I'd never felt towards my nan. So I just decided to leave. And then I went back to the children's home, and I told the staff what was going on, and they just dismissed it. There wasn't really, at that time when I was in care, like the early noughties, things were still a bit shaky for our community. So like the staff, they didn't really have any education about it or how to deal with it. And then I was also getting bullied by the residents because none of them were within our community. They were all, heterosexual, and I battled a lot with that. I got beaten up quite a bit. And also in secondary school, I only stayed till year 7 because I was getting bullied and beaten up then as well because of my sexuality. I just decided to be as open as I could about my sexuality because I thought, well, I'm not going to change for anyone because I'd previously tried to do that for the sake of other people. So I started sleeping with men in their 40s and stuff like that because I thought, that is what people wanted to see me do. But after the bullying and stuff like that, I just had enough at that point, and I decided that I was just going to be who I damn well please, and I'm not going to change for anybody. And so, yeah, I just continued to be my authentic self, and I just didn't care who I pissed off on the way because that's their problem, not mine. You are mute.
I mean, I know your story, but it's still always, I find it hard to hear. Thank you for sharing, because it's very brave to do that with an audience of people that you don't know. And you should be so proud of yourself as that little 12-year-old girl who was already dismissed from her family, and the only one person in the family left then decided to respond to you being open and truthful in such a way. But you really should be proud of who you are and everything you've achieved. We are. So
Thank you.
For me, I was told I was gay from a very early age. I didn't even know what it meant. I think I had to ask my mum, what does this mean? Being more effeminate than friends at school led to lots of bullying, physical and verbal assaults. That led me to a quite a dark place, actually, with mental ill health, suffering with anxiety and depression, and body metamorphosis disorder, which was something that I carried with me for a long, long time in my life. And mental ill health is quite typical of people in our community. Half of our community have suffered with mental ill health. From what you went through, Chan, how did that impact your mental health?
Oh, massively. I ended up with severe anxiety and depression. I made a few attempts on my life. One almost successful, but yeah, it greatly impacted my mental health, to the point where I had to really look at how I was going to get myself out of the situation. I just wanted to be away from humans. I lost faith in humanity. So, I was part of the reason I started committing crimes and stuff was to put myself in a safe place so I can, be myself and just people who I thought would accept me. And then I just sought out therapy and worked on my demons.
Which that's when you don't have anybody to stand by you and help you fight those demons. It's a very lonely place, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that just goes back to what we were saying earlier about the importance of allies and having people around you that have got your back, whatever, and that will help you fight those demons makes such a difference. I'm quite moved, Chan, when I do get like this when I think of you as a little girl going through that. Joanne, what do you want to share anything about coming out experiences or mental ill health?
Yeah, the hardest person I had to come out to was myself. I grew up, I was born in the mid-60s, grew up in the 70s. I was in my teenage years when AIDS became dominant in the world and homosexuality was only decriminalized in 67, but there was nothing around trans identities. I was able to glimpse the odd TV program around, I think it was Julia Grant at the time, showed her sort of medicalized process. There was some Open University, but all this kind of stuff was grabbed here and there when my parents were at work or I was off school sick or something like this. So there's nothing that I could relate to in the world. So I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was going on in my head. And so when the internet came along and things like that started developing, that I suddenly realized that there was a box that I could potentially fit in. You know, I knew I wasn't queer in that bigger gay lesbian sense, but I was kind of not like everybody else. So I think in the mid 2010 to 2015, that's when it's Facebook. So I started realizing that there was a language, there was people like me. I wasn't unique, I wasn't broken. I just hadn't figured out who I was. So coming out to myself, was I trans enough? You know, it's like you're trying to say, well, surely I'm an intelligent human being. I must be able to fix this and suppress it and hide it, and I don't need to do this. And then you do all these little tests to prove you're trans enough. And I always remember doing those all the time, thinking, no, I can keep going. I can keep going. I don't need this. And it wasn't until I got to about, I think 2014, I tried to fix myself by growing this massive beard. You know, I've got some photographs of it. It's a kind of, people say it's quite impressive. And I thought I'd fix myself after 6 months. And then one day, I think what I was doing was I was trying to archive, if you like, my old alternate self and put it in cases or maybe charity shopping or binning it. And that one act of bringing it back into my head made me think, now all I'm doing is burying this. So within about half an hour, the beard came off and I started owning the fact that this was never going to go away. It was truly a part of me. I was lucky at the time that I shared some of this. I'd already shared some of this with my wife, Marie. I'm not saying she was cool with it, but it was kind of, it was okay. It was in a box. We kind of dealt with it. It was like me playing golf or going fishing once a week. It was kind of a something we could manage, but nobody else in the world knew. And it wasn't until 2016 where the box that was holding me together at that point just exploded and I just couldn't keep it in anymore. So I told my children, 16th of July 2016, and then a week later, I posted something on Facebook after a few drinks and became open and out with the world. And then I woke up in the morning having sobered up and decided rather than bluff it, I just owned it. So that was how I came out. But I was still scared. I was still scared to come out with my work colleagues. I own my own business. I was too scared to come out. So I suppressed it and didn't talk about it at work, although I did talk about it with my friends, and that was exhausting. It was a serial coming out because I had to sit down and have a conversation with every single person I knew in my network. Go, yes, it's true. This is who I am. And you get all those invasive questions about, so what does that mean? Do you fancy men? Do men fancy you? And who are you trying to kid sort of stuff? And I expected there to be a party. And I think just someone said earlier, there was no party. There was no, yay, Joe, you're trans. It's fantastic. It was like, all right, oh, well. And there was no excitement for me. It was just kind of, well, whatever. If I was getting married or having a baby or something, everyone would have been baby showers and parties and flags, and everyone would be congratulating me. But this is kind of like, whatever. Strange, weird. Oh. So I found it a real anticlimax. I had no satisfaction or gratification from it other than having to deal with the trauma that resulted. And there was a lot of tough times with my two children, our daughters, Charlotte and Will. They struggled. They struggled initially with that. And it took them many, many years to finally kind of embrace dad as a different kind of dad. And even now, my wife and my two children, if they were honest, they would say to me, we still miss the old person. And because they do see me as a different person, I try to hold on to this, I'm still the same person on the inside mantra. But my wife wanted to me one day is, look in the mirror, admit to yourself, we don't see the same person anymore. That person we once knew, maybe saying has died is a bit dramatic, but that person is no longer with us. You are a different person in how you look, how you behave, how you speak, how you interact, how you laugh, how you cry. Everything about you has changed. So that was the struggle for me. It was that being accepting myself, that I was who I was now, and that I was good enough, and that I was valid, and that I could live a productive life. So coming out to the world, that was kind of like a moment of madness. Dealing with that was where the struggle of and believing in myself was where the real coming out story started, if you like.
Wow. Again, thank you so much for sharing. Next time I see you, we're definitely going to have a celebration event, a drink that you're expecting to get when you did come out. But and I think your experience there and your story just reminds that it's not always us as an individual that's impacted by our coming out, but actually there's family and there's friends who suddenly the person that they thought we might have been are impacted by this coming out too. So, but thank you for sharing that. And you know, you mentioned the word, I think, about being afraid or fear. In 2021, there was close to 10,000 physical attacks on the LGBTQIA community, and those are just ones that are reported to the police. And there's a lot of people in our community that will be too afraid to go actually speak to the police. Trans attacks, transphobic attacks, sorry, by my words, were at all-time high. They rose 3 years consistently. So yes, pride is about celebration and protesting, but also this is just our basic right to be who we are without being attacked for it. So 375 transgender people were murdered in 2021 just for being their authentic selves. Nothing is just for being who they are.
Can I just chuck in there that the attacks aren't always physical?
Yes.
There's a lot of emotional attacks. There's a lot of media attacks. There's a lot of I would describe it as this wind in my face when I step out the front door, the stuff pushing me back in every day when I wake up, when many people wake up. So it's not the sticks and stones that are the problem. It's the words, it's the environmental, it's the culture we're now living in. And I'm talking mainly about trans people here. I don't have a lesbian or gay perspective. I think from a trans perspective. That toxicity that we're constantly dealing with, that proving that I am valid, proving I'm not a threat, I'm not going to invade people's spaces and all this kind of thing. Because every time I walk out the door, I'm looking over my shoulder, wondering if today's the day where someone's going to shout and scream at me. And that's what many trans non-binary people face day in, day out. And it's not the physical side, it's that mental side that is most problematic.
Can we just talk a little bit more about those words that are used? Because a lot of the words, certainly that were used at me when I was young, like queer, queen, faggot, some of them we've actually now taken back and we own. And so I did see on one of M's posts that somebody had been offended, and I'm not sure if this chap's in the audience or not today, but by the fact that we were using the word queer. I hated it when I was a child, because if I stepped out of the house, I could guarantee people would be shouting queer at me. But now I love it, and I feel like it kind of embraces all of our community, and there's so much more to me than just the gay. I think and our community is queer, kind of just covers a lot more than gay. What words were the most hurtful to each of you, and do you now own those words, or would they still hurt if somebody shouted them at you?
For me personally, growing up, what was really painful is when the word gay was used in a negative setting. Like if you were playing sports, you missed the goal, like, oh, that's gay. Like that sort of negative connotation, it just reinforces this feeling that being gay is bad, it's wrong, it's disappointing. And I feel like many people don't really know, well, at least they used to, they didn't really used to appreciate the implication that their words would have on people that were struggling with their sexuality, or people that were gay, or you know, not straight. So that for me was the most painful.
And that, I'm really glad you've brought that to the discussion, because I don't remember what years it were, but there was a DJ called Chris Moyles on Radio 1 who would use "that's so gay" all the time. And there was petitions to say stop it because it's making the word gay derogatory, but he refused. He refused to stop saying "that's so gay." And now that is evident in schoolyards, as you say, "that's so gay," and it being used as something that's a bad thing. That for our allies out there, you know, if you hear banter in the bar or at work, which is homophobic or is offensive to our community, then please address that, because those words actually they are very powerful, and often they can be more hurtful than a punch in the face. So do say to people, stop using those words. And there's that, if that's something that's used as banter at work, then it needs to be stopped, because a colleague who might not be out of the closet, because 1 in 5 people at work that are gay and the part of our community are not out. So you don't know who's going home and thinking to themselves about the words that you've been using as banter. Thank you for bringing that one, because "that's so gay" is just, for me, just a really awful, hurtful thing as well. Chan, how about you?
I think for me it was the word "dyke." It stirred up a lot of feelings in me. I just thought it just sounded aggressive. It wasn't very nice. And also the word allowed people to just associate my sexuality with sex. That's it. Like, when people hear the term lesbian, also, like, some people just associate it with sex, when that's not all it is. It's about companionship. And I try to tell people this all the time, but you can't really educate people that are set in their ways and don't want to accept change. So yeah, I like, in the pub that I go to, like, a lot of the guys there, they're harmless, but the way they throw the term lesbian around and make derogatory comments about lesbians and refer to them as dyke, sometimes I have to step in and say, it's not right for you to use that term. I don't appreciate it. It offends me. Can you stop?
Do they stop or do they continue?
They do stop.
They stop.
But then if they've had a few to drink, they start to slip back into old behaviours.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's difficult.
And Joanne, you mentioned about stepping out of the house and hearing words or verbal attacks. What words are still hurtful, and are there any words that you've actually taken on and you own now?
I would say the impact of words is subtly different. So let me read some words out to you. That these are words that I hear, we hear, people hear. Ill, sick, not natural. We live in a binary world. There is no other alternative. You can't change your sex. Child molester, child damager, cheat in sport, fetish, perverted, body mutilators, deluded. Those are the words we hear by people in power, people who write children's books, people who sit in the House of Lords, people who write articles in the Sunday Times and the Daily Telegraph, people that we think should be there to protect us and advocate for us, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of Exchequer, MPs. These are words that they use, not all of them. So you can call me a tranny, that doesn't hurt me. It's the attitude and the beliefs that are stacked against me and trans and non-binary people, people who are genderqueer. That's what hurts. It's that pervasive, pejorative language that's used against us.
I'm sorry, again, this made me feel quite emotional, Joanne. I pull people up on those words and those comments on socials a lot, and I have no idea how you feel, but I just, that's so upsetting to see that kind of language being used as part of our community, and it is really not acceptable. And there's just those words are just so hurtful. But thank you for sharing. I want to now just kind of look at the workplace, because I think I just mentioned a little earlier that 1 in 5 are still afraid to come out at work. That's a huge percent of our community. And there's things I think that employers, if they're not already doing, could be doing to improve things for our community. Now, Joanne, I've seen you delivering anti-bias training, which I feel is a great starting point for all organizations. What kind of, if we were all to sort of look at picking out a few things that would be most significant that could be taken by the people who are here today away and taken back to their workplace, what would you say? So I'm going to start with you, Joanne, because I know this is your specialism and this is what you do professionally too. So let's hear what some things that you think should be taken back to the workplace.
Fundamentally, I always start with listen, respect, educate, and advocate. So start by listening to my experience, the experience of others, understand that bow wave of pressure and the toxicity that I'm aware of all the time. Respect my identity, who I am, my pronouns, my name, all that makes me happy, all that makes me sad. Educate yourself, take that responsibility to do the research, do the heavy lift, but also be cautious that some information out there purports to be genuine, but actually it's toxic. In the same way we get lots of anti-vax and vax arguments and debates, seek out information and education from reliable, truthful sources, not misinformation. Then advocate. Be the ally, be the advocate when I'm not in the room. You don't just declare your pronouns or talk about pronouns or be gender agnostic or gender inclusive when I'm in the room. Do it when I'm not there. Do it when you're on the internet, applying for a job, looking at a site, registering online, and the drop down has male and female only. Where's the non-binary option? What can you do at that point? You can message the people saying, hang on a minute, these questions aren't inclusive. So being always that ally, whether I'm in the room or sitting next to you or not. So the key thing here is just be aware of those ways you can be supportive. And it's active, it's 24/7, it's holistic, and it's deliberate ways of supporting people. So that's what I advise organizations to do. Recognize that each trans person, each queer person, whatever their identity or sexual orientation is unique. We have different experiences. The intersection between race, faith, gender identity, and sexuality, many communities have different struggles. The white experience is different to the black experience, to the brown experience, and you add in that the religion as well. So recognize that people struggle. Age has an impact. The older you are, sometimes it's misunderstanding. The younger you are, maybe it's easier. But again, you can't generalize. So that's what I encourage organizations to do, to be both a corporate ally, like in the same way that when the Free to Be Me conference was cancelled, that was cancelled by pressure by corporate organizations standing up against the fact that trans conversion therapy was dropped from the government conversion therapy bill. That was corporate organizations that pulled out sponsorship. That's what corporates do. They can come together and be that strength. Individually, as I say, work on what makes me happy, what makes me sad, and help me be happy. That's all I ask.
Thank you. Yes, that's some great advice for anybody that's joined us today who was keen to come and listen and be able to take back some actions to their workplace. Thank you, Joanne. Chan, what 1 or 2 suggestions, or what do you think there's so many. I have long lists of things that I would give. So if anybody wants my list, then just drop me a DM. But Chan, if you were to pick out a couple, what would they be?
I think for me, the first one would be going back to being an ally. And really, in organisations, it starts from the top of the food chain, and funnels its way down. The way someone leads and their attitude towards people from our community, the way that they are, and the progression that they see within the company, and the way that they're treated is going to reflect on how other people treat them. So that goes hand in hand with my second point, which was going to be about like enforcing a zero tolerance policy to discrimination, derogatory comments, antisocial behaviour towards people from our community, and training on how to be a better ally. And also this zero tolerance policy shouldn't just apply to inside the workplace, should apply to when they have work drinks, parties, Christmas dues, everything like that. I think it just should be enforced. And like I say, it starts with the leader.
It definitely does. People always follow a good leader. So if a good leader is supportive and a true ally, then the rest of the team will adopt that approach and follow as well. And I think just in addition to what you said, Chan, organizations should make sure that they have robust policies in place around harassment and bullying. And that's not just for our community, that's just in general, but specifically looking at how it impacts our community. Because if you look at the numbers of harassment and bullying, they're much higher when it comes to our community, and especially the trans community. So there needs to be repercussions in that policy to say we don't accept this and this is what's going to happen to you, and a process for people to follow to log complaints and be heard. So I agree that there's the organization and their leadership, but then that leader needs supporting with robust processes in place that should be set up by HR. Decontee, what about you? What one or two things you think?
Really fantastic points. I think training is really, really important. I feel like lots of the negative behaviors, they're so like unconscious, they're so they've been going on for such a long time. I feel like sometimes you need training to even become aware to it. So I think having training is a great starting point. And as well as having policies, I think having a policy written down isn't quite enough. I think you need to put that into practice. You need to make sure that you're not treating everyone the same. Equality doesn't necessarily mean treating everyone the same. It's recognizing people's differences and allowing for those differences, and seeing the, all of the person, not just certain parts.
Completely. I love how you just summarized that little bit as well. Let's celebrate people for who they are. Let's not try and make people conform to all be the same. So thank you. Some really great points there. So I'm hoping that anybody that was looking for some actions today can take those back. I think some little things that you could take back and do straight away, given well, Pride Month's just finished, but that doesn't mean we continue supporting the LGBTQIA plus community. That should carry on all the time, all year long. But if you've been doing stuff to celebrate Pride, if you're going to be at Pride in London tomorrow, then think about what you could do for the more marginalized in our community. There's some really great charities out there that your teams could be fundraising for to support who are helping those that are most vulnerable in our community. If you look at the amount of homeless people in the UK, you break it down to young people aged 18 to 24, 26% are LGBTQIA. So that's a huge proportion of homeless people from our community. 77%, sadly, said the reason for them being homeless was coming out to family and then no longer feeling safe at home. So there's charities supporting young people that are going through this. There's I would say look at a charity that might be one that's supported by your organization, and do something like, you know, get involved, get out there, go volunteer, go do some fundraising, like give back rather than just waving the flag. There's a lot of money made from queer washing organizations that are out there waving the rainbow flag to promote themselves and get a good bit of PR in there, but actually are doing nothing, you know, not giving back, not giving any of those profits to the most vulnerable in our community. So that's my little bit on employers as well. But I think
Can I just
yes.
add one thing? I think it's really, really important that you recognise that the support you put in place and the needs are unique to individuals. Also, a solution or an initiative that may benefit gay men is not the same one that lesbian women, bisexual people, or certainly trans. I've had people saying, "Oh, we put drag bingo on." Well, that's fine. I'm not against drag bingo, but it doesn't represent me. It's kind of gay culture, not trans culture. So thinking beyond what you think is lumping the alphabet together and saying, well, you're all queer, you must all like ABBA and karaoke and this sort of thing, is not always true. So understanding the different needs that each community have, and so when we talk about being homeless and those numbers, trans people are even more disproportionately homeless than gay or lesbian young people as well. So recognizing that the needs are different for the different identities and sexualities, and not just trying to paint us all with the same brush.
Yeah, it's a huge community that we live in with or many facets and different types of people. So yes, a good starting point for employers might be to actually ask your community, the queer community, what they can do for them and what they would like to see in the organization. The starting point might be to get a bit of a dialogue going around what the needs of that workforce are.
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, you
Which I heard
can
someone said the other day, and I thought this was so insightful. When we talk about the gay community, the queer community, the trans community, it almost like tries to label us in the same way we use BAME or BME, or white people or black people. It's meaningless. So this person said to me, rather than call it the gay community or the queer community, it's the communities. It's a collection of sub-communities and subgroups, and people come together under a big communities barrier, not a community singular. So I think that's a great way of looking at it. Let's call us a communities of people, not a community of people. Yeah,
brilliant. I will start using that as well. I'll steal it from you and your friend. Thank you.
I stole it from somebody else. No, it's a great bit of advice.
Break forward or whatever it is. Anyway, okay, so I think it's probably now a time actually, because our audience have been putting questions in the chat, and I think it'd be a great opportunity now for some questions to be directed at our lovely panelists. Emma, are you able to?
I am here. Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for coming along. So the first question was actually received last, but I think it's the most relevant given the conversation we've just had. It's from Amir. Amir, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Training can do so much, and as much as I fully support it, I think implementing KPI metrics into job descriptions and deliverables, especially within the senior leadership, enforces people to be held accountable for their behaviour. It wasn't so much a question but a statement, but my question to the panel is, do you agree?
Who wants to go first? I'm sure we all have an opinion.
It's the old adage, if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done.
Perfect.
And if you reward poor behavior propagates. So you have to reward positive actions, positive intent, positive deliberation. So yes, completely. OKRs, KPIs, they must set expectations of good behavior that aligns with corporate values. I don't want it to be all stick. There must be some carrot in there. People must understand why it matters. If you're just ticking a KPI box to get a pay rise, then it's the wrong motivation. So yes, let's have measurements, let's have statistics, let's have insight data, actionable insights, and create an expectation. And if that means through OKRs and KPIs, then yes, I agree. We should have measurables in there so that people know their responsibility.
I think
Oh, Jan.
personally, the KPI metrics, I think I agree with it, but as long as it's done in the correct way, and it's not just used as a way to, oh, if you meet these KPIs, these are going to be your rewards, because this should be behavior that you're displaying anyway. So yeah, that with a mixture of training, in my opinion, could work.
Thank you. How about you, Decontee?
I think it's a good idea to measure it, because yeah, if you don't measure it, I'm not sure how much of an impact it would actually make. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with everything Joanne said. And I do think that very senior leadership, if they don't want to support from their heart, they'll definitely support if they're penalized financially with bonuses. So I think there has to be some implications around, you know, if things are not done. Otherwise, we won't get the change that we want.
Well, thank you. So the next question is from Kirsty, and she asks the panel, how can employers encourage people to be their authentic selves in the workplace?
That is a great question. I'm going to go first, just and then I'll throw it out to the panel, because having role models at work is so important, and having people who are in leadership roles and out and visible will encourage others to do the same. And I think if there's not that visibility, then suddenly we become invisible again. So I think organizations can do that by my first, there's a few things, but I'm going to leave it at one, and that is to have role models in place, to have mentors, and to have positive representation in leadership. I'll now go over to you, Joanne.
The government tried it, didn't they? They created a Free to Be Me conference. They said you're all free to be you and be yourself and bring your whole self to society. So you cannot just impose what you believe is a cultural standard within your organization. It comes down to psychological safety. Do I believe that I can trust me, my identity, my humanity, my sense of self with you? Will you enhance me or will you break me? If I feel you're going to break me, I won't feel safe to be me. I won't feel safe to come out. So I want to know that I can speak up and voice my opinion without recrimination. I want to know that I can express myself, obviously within the bounds of politeness, in the way I feel in an organization. So that's a culture that is developed and nurtured by leadership, but at all levels, whilst also respecting the fact we are all leaders as well of ourselves, but leaders of people, influencers of people around us. So I think it's a culture that is nurtured. You cannot just say, yeah, you can bring your whole self to work, because it's a very easy and bland statement to say, yeah, bring your whole self to work. When I say, well, that's easy for you to say, you straight white man. Yeah, it's always easy to be yourself. It's not so easy. The more things you have, the more pebbles you have in your rucksack, the more burden you carry every day. So by creating cultures, environments, communication, as you said already, role models, positive affirmations, support, lived experience talks, normalizing conversations around pronouns, around gender identities, where people can say, here's me and my husband, here's me and my wife, without having to look over their shoulder or worry if that's going to create offense. So it's a nurturing of that kind of culture, not something you can just say, yay, we're all safe, because that's not how people feel.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joanne. Cam?
I don't think I can really add to that because I agree with everything that Joanne just said. But yeah, it just goes back to feeling like work is one of your safe spaces, and having people around you that will help you build up the confidence and your self-esteem within that environment. So yeah.
Thank you. Decontee, what were your thoughts on that?
I think again, it's about acting as well as talking. So it's about choosing who your suppliers, what suppliers you use. If something's happened, make a decision as to whether you're going to be doing business with those certain types of organizations. Definitely about representation. Don't just promote one certain type of person. Don't just sort of like have that as the face of your company. I think representation is really, really important. Make sure you have a diversity amongst your ranks. Yeah, I think that's it. And also, and again, just don't think that everyone is the same. Like, we're all very different. Don't treat everyone the same.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. We all have our own unique experiences to share and bring to the table. Thank you. And I love the procurement bit as well. Like, make sure your supply chain is adopting the same values and principles that you want to see in your business. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, we've got two more so far. This one's actually from me. I hope you don't mind. Shan spoke about bullying and that being the reason she left school. And I think, most people on the call will be able to understand the impact of bullying. Lots of people have already been bullied, but probably not to the point where you've had to take the decision to leave school. And what I'm really interested in is the impact of that decision throughout Shan's life. Has it made it difficult to enter the labour market or be considered by employers? And if this is something that's going on quite regularly or frequently, do employers need to think about people like you, Shan, who have not completed their education, for example, and the ways in which they might engage with people like you to ensure that they're still applying for their jobs and being considered seriously when they do apply? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it certainly did make it difficult to enter the labour market, and more specifically, it made it even more difficult for me to get into any senior positions. I had to work harder than the other person to get to that level, and yeah, there just wasn't a lot of thought put into the process when I was in my previous workplace. It was kind of I had to keep badgering and working my ass off to get to a position that I really wanted to be in. And then when I did get to that position, I was kind of being micromanaged, and they were watching my every move, kind of like they wanted me to fail. So yes, I think in answer to your question, I think that it really needs to be looked at and assessed thoroughly, the procedures that workplaces and organizations have in place.
Thank you, Chan. I think you said there was one more question. I'm just mindful of time.
Yeah, thank you. So this one's from AG. And AG said, thank you all for sharing. Wishing you all the very best. I was wondering if you would touch on the dispiriting debate currently taking place between a segment of the feminist cohort and the trans community around the notion of womanhood and the rights, privileges, responsibilities tied to gender. Personally, it's very hard to witness respected feminists who seem to be genuine allies of the LGBTQIA plus community now express that they feel threatened and must push back. As a gay man, how can I, or better yet, all of us, be a true ally to the trans community whilst also remaining an absolute advocate of gender equity? And this one's probably a good one for Joanne, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I was reading it in the chat just as you're reading it out, and let's start with the end of that question. How can you be a good ally? I think the key for me would be do the heavy lift, do the legwork, do the education, speak to trans people, understand our lived experience, understand how it makes us feel every single day. But also, I'd also ask you to maybe talk to people who do feel threatened. Why do they feel threatened? What is this false dictum that's out there that says trans women are a threat to women's spaces or women's rights or sex-based rights? Why is that something? I can tell you until I'm blue in the face that I'm not a threat. I'm not this. I'm not the other. Not the other. Where it becomes more powerful is when it's not me saying it. It's when it's an ally saying it. Anti-racism is far better carried out by white people. Anti-sexism is far better carried out by men who can make the change and deliver those benefits. Allyship is best delivered by people who aren't trans, because you could speak from a cis lens and dispel some of the myths. If I say it, it's just me saying it. If you say it, it's more powerful. So I think be very careful. There are lots of websites, lots of information out there that purport to be balanced and fair, but if you read between the lines, they start from a position of unfairness. And I heard Lord Coe the other day speaking, or his article he wrote, and he says sport has to be fair. If I'm given the choice between fairness and inclusion, fairness wins. But why can't we have fairness that includes? How do we start from a position where inclusion is important, and we work out how we can make that fair, rather than saying they're polar opposites, they're exclusionary. So I think that's the challenge we face. How can we create an inclusive conversation where nobody feels they're losing, everybody feels respected, everyone feels valued, and no one is being demonized? And I think that's the trouble with some of the debate at the moment, is we're creating these demonized avatars of trans women, not trans men or non-binary people. It's of trans women with this men in a dress mantra, and how unfair it is for these big, burly, bearded people with makeup and skirts on invading our spaces. And that's this image that they keep shoving in people's faces. Whereas the lived experience of 99.99% of trans people are just, in this case, women getting on with their lives, and more scared than anybody else is about going into a toilet and having a pee, because they're worried they're going to be their flashpoint. So I think as a gay man, as a straight man, as a gay woman, or whoever you may be in the audience today, start having conversations with trans people to understand the lived experience. Start to unpack the false information you're hearing, and start to advocate and call it out when you hear this false information. And it's a red line. Your view is trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary people are completely valid, and we need to respect that. And I'm not saying this is because then we get accused of brainwashing you, saying, oh, this is the Stonewall brainwashing going on here. Form your own opinion. Form your own opinion. What do you believe in?
Thank you, Joanne. That was very powerful, and it's great to hear you say that. Any further questions from the audience?
No, unless someone wants to fit one in before we finish up. Any other questions?
From the
I
audience?
can't see any. Yeah,
No?
I can't see any. Thank you.
Does
So
anyone in the audience want to share what they're doing to support trans people already? Has anyone got any good news stories out there?
Pride, good news stories, anything they want to share? Is there anybody out there in the audience who wants to just talk about their experience while we have a few minutes left? No? Well, I'm going to go around the panelists again then, one last time. Let's wrap up. Either I'd like for you to just give one piece of advice to the audience today about allyship. It can be something we discussed earlier, but one thing that you want them to really take away. Or what would you say if you were able to speak to your 5-year-old self today? What would you say to that little 5-year-old? So I'll just give you a minute to think. You can choose either. And I think I am going to start with you, Chan.
Sorry, did it have to be one or both?
You can do both. Yep, you can do both, absolutely.
I'd say if you're going to be an ally, do it with authenticity and a purpose. And then to my 5-year-old self, I would probably say you're not wrong for feeling what you feel. Go ahead and be yourself without fear of judgment, and just go on with your life and be who you are.
Thank you. How about you, Joanne?
I'd say to my 5-year-old self, just do what makes you happy and carry on doing what you feel is right at the time. Because when you're 57.5 years old, you're doing okay and you're fine. So don't sweat it. Just enjoy your childhood, enjoy your adulthood, build a great family, and enjoy the world.
Great advice. Thank you. Decontee.
My advice to my 5-year-old self would be, you are not alone. Like, you are unique, you are beautiful, but also you are not alone. There are people out there like you. That's why I feel so passionately about representation. Growing up, I didn't see queer people on the TV. We didn't see queer people on the media. I think it's really, really important that, we are visible, that we are seen, so that people know that we are not alone. We're a part of a much wider community.
Communities within a community as well. Today, so
yes,
that's my takeaway for myself. And I hope that the audience will take that away too. So thank you. Yes, you're definitely, I think those would be wise words to say to a 5-year-old. So I think of my 5-year-old self a lot, little Lee, because all the things that I was good at 5 years old were, I was told, I was frowned upon. They were like, that you shouldn't be good at that. That's for a girl, and you shouldn't be good at this. And so I had to hide all of that stuff, which led to me feeling bad about myself and also feeling rejected by everyone. So I think over the years, I tried to get validation and approval from everyone else. And I tried to pretend and hide, even as a gay man, being openly gay, still some of the things that I was good at as a boy. And now I'm learning that, and this is what I would say to little Lee. I, as Lee, as a middle-aged man, I love you, and I think you are worth something. And I give all my, I give you the validation that you need. You don't need to get it from anyone else. So I think that kind of wraps up, and I hope that everybody's enjoyed today and got some great takeaways and actions from this. I really just want to say thank you to the panel. It's been a fantastic opportunity to sit with you all and talk. I felt like we're just chatting amongst ourselves. It's been so great, and I'm hoping so powerful. Each of you, if you are celebrating London Pride tomorrow, whatever you're doing for Pride, happy Pride, and yeah, be proud of yourselves, because I think you're all amazing.